administration there. The officer had his surgery that yesterday afternoon, expected to be released from the hospital. They said last night or this morning. I have not yet myself seen an update on whether or not he has been released from the hospital yet or not. We will take a look and try to make sure you're aware of that when I can find that. I have not seen that update. Again, expected to make a full recovery. If they thought maybe he could get out of the hospital last night, yes, that sounds like that would absolutely be that expectation. The man was shot by officers and confirmed dead at the scene. Authorities said that they found 2 firearms, multiple spent bullet cases in the motel room, and that's what multiple witnesses had reported. That it had been very loud, it sounded like I had heard one of them say it sounded like a rain of bullets, rain of gunshots, and the like. Many people asked us, did you hear that? Did you see that? No, I mean, we're a little too far away from that to have been involved in any way. Like I said, outside of the traffic, and then being told, hey, the freeway is closed. Like, you can't get on the freeway and go south right now. And you can't do that, which is how I would get on the freeway to go home, right? That's exactly how I would go home. Now, there's 9 ways for me to get home. And look, it's not about me being, inconvenienced. That's not the story at all. As a matter of fact, when I saw it, I said, okay, well, I could fit this situation out in traffic, or I could sit it out in here where I could gather information. I'm better off sitting in the building where I can gather information. And so I just turned it into a little bit of a longer work day. I was like, this is clearly what I'm talking about tomorrow, at least in the 7 o'clock hour, probably, if not once, twice, 3 times, maybe. So that, that's how I view that. Now, suspect fired multiple times at them. They say multiple gunshots were fired over several minutes. The subject's criminal history, according to Mr. Elliott, included bank robberies, armed robbery, and violent crimes. The arrest warrant that drew officers to him on Monday was for being a felon in possession of a firearm. Quote, he did not want to go peacefully, Mr. Elliott said. Stark County Sheriff George Meyer said that the number of rounds was unknown at that point of Monday afternoon. He and other law enforcement officials talked about the shooting at a press conference. That was about 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon. So more and more information will come out on that. You'll get more and more data and here's what we know and here's how many shots it was, and more of that will come out. But scary situation yesterday here in Canton, obviously, and I'll echo their sentiments there. That it seems as if this is, every law enforcement official gets to go home at the end of the day. You know what I mean? When gunfire happens, when guns are drawn and bullets are exchanged, if every law enforcement official gets to go home at the end of that night, I think I just gotta go, okay, well, that's probably the best possible end to that situation. And more than enough perpetrators are not willing to go peaceful. They say what a lot of them are trying to do is commit suicide by police officers, suicide by law enforcement, right? I'll draw, I'll shoot, you shoot me. Now I don't have to think about going to prison. I cannot put myself in the mind of that person. I've never met that person. I don't know him. He is no longer alive. But that doesn't necessarily sound far-fetched to me. More than a few people were at some businesses close to the situation, including many restaurants right there. We do have a few eyewitness reports. I'll run you through a few of those here next on Rock 106.9.
The Stansberry Show.
It's a play, you moron.
On Rock 106.9. Back to the Stansberry Show. Rock 106.9.
A podcaster has smoked her dead father. On the pod. We got to see it. I got some audio. We'll talk about that a little later. Recently, we've been talking about the tragedy here in town. Roadway Inn. Law enforcement officials trying to issue a warrant, arrest a fugitive. That fugitive decided to lock himself, barricade himself into the hotel room, exchange gunfire. He was shot and killed at the scene. One member of law enforcement here, a North Canton police officer who was on the SWAT team, was injured, expected to make a full recovery. And we were talking about that a little bit yesterday. I was made aware of it just walking down the hallway here yesterday. As I just looked out the window of the building and I saw that there were cars just backed up and down Freedom Avenue. And that's just not, it's a pretty popular street that uses a cut through, and there's a couple of business here, so you'll get some cars. 5 o'clock, you'll see some traffic there, right? Maybe a little 9 a.m. When I get here in the morning, nobody. When I leave here in the afternoon, most time, there's nobody on this street. It's just kind of the way it is. So it was a noticeable thing. And I said, what's going on? They said, well, they closed the freeway down. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And that's when I was made aware of like, oh, this is what we're hearing, and we didn't have any confirmation thereof yet, but some people in the building had heard some stuff, and then we started to investigate and like, so we were talking about that a little. And I saw this at cantonrep.com where they had they had talked to a few people who were on site who were terrified, obviously. I mean, people asked me a little bit yesterday, and I don't want to make this about me, but like, were you guys worried there? It's like, nah, it's like, we didn't hear anything. It's not like you could hear it. It's not like we were aware. It's like, had we not read it online, I'm not sure we would have ever known. Like I said, looking out of the window, it's like, yeah, all right, that's a noticeable amount of cars that's abnormal because they were routing all the traffic through here, right? And so like, that was abnormal. That's how I would have, maybe once I heard, like most people, I started to think about people I care about. And people who work in those restaurants that are close to that. And I got a few people I know, and it's like, I got to tell you, as a non-religious person, I walked back to the studio yesterday and I said, God, please, just please. I'm not even religious, but in that moment, I felt like, I need to know, right? Because it's just, it's uncertain. It's terrifying, scary. James Belcher happened to be on site. Said knew something was going to be going on as they started to notice a large law enforcement presence. It was all gathering pretty much right outside of his motel room. Apparently, the SWAT team had used a loudspeaker, told him, the suspect, trying to communicate with him, then barricaded himself in the room. They told him to come in the air, nobody would be hurt. He then refused. Belcher said about an hour after the standoff had started, he heard a gunshot, apparently fired by the suspect himself. Then volleys of bullets began flying between authorities and the gunman. And that's the way I had heard it yesterday, and I had seen a few people talking about that, and it was tough, right? Because I would like to take everybody at their word that they were there. We know there are going to be people who look to capitalize on these moments, say that they were there, and here's what happened, and this and that, who weren't. It's a very tricky time now. I'm assuming that, the Canton rep figured out that this guy was, in fact, staying at the hotel. All you'd have to do is go to the hotel and be like, can we confirm, right? I mean, like, it would probably be as easy as that. So, again, one of the law enforcement officials shot in the arm and began to bleed. Belcher saw that through the crack of his barely open motel room door. The injured officer's fellow SWAT team members got the officer out of the line of fire, thank God. And then Belcher said he saw a police sniper firing shots from the parking lot at the adjoining parking lot at the Cracker Barrel store and restaurant. That's his report of seeing that. That's, again, we started to hear that yesterday, and that's where I started to get a little worried myself. Again, people can get a little selfish in these moments. Please, God, and that's exactly where that kicked in for me. He said he also saw an ambulance some distance away, and that's, of course, not shocking. His girlfriend, a stepdaughter, the girlfriend's daughter, and 2 grandchildren got down and laid flat. Neither them nor Belcher were hurt. Again, thank the dear Lord there. How terrifying is that? Quote, we had them down on the floor up against the wall just in case something ricocheted off of a vehicle or something came through. He said he could see outside his window that Interstate 77 had been shut down. Right after the officer got shot, my girlfriend and my stepdaughter were saying, oh my God, I think that triggered the kids, and they were crying a bit. Yeah, I would imagine. Not all that unlikely that a child is going to cry in that situation. I got to be honest with you, not all that unlikely that an adult is going to cry in that situation. Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the police began lowering their weapons and taking off their tactical gear. That, according to, again, Mr. Belcher, who was on scene. That seems about right as far as like my timeline goes. Again, we're right around the corner from here, not in any danger of being involved in it in any way, shape, or form. I wasn't at all, like I said, but like that was about, like I left here yesterday at about 2:40 in the afternoon. It's about 20 to 3. I remember looking at, because I wanted to be able to say, this is late for me, and I wanted like a frame of reference about when it was. And so I looked at, and you know what, I bet my clock at my car's 10 minutes past. I bet it was 2:30 when it was morning. Right? And I was able to get then on the freeway and go home, and it was, you know what I mean? They had everything pretty much cleared up by then. But 2:30 on any given Monday is a little late for me to be in the office. But when I saw what was happening, when I heard what was happening, I was like, well, dude, the worst thing you could do is get in the car when you don't need to. Go put yourself in this situation. Make the traffic worse. Maybe make it worse for law enforcement to try to get around when you don't need to be a part of it. Just sit still. You'll be fine. Right? So that's what we did. And like I said, according to this guy's timeline, I think he's probably right about what he's saying here, because that's about what we saw. Officers had killed the suspect with a gunshot. A Stark County coroner's investigator was on his way to the scene. That is reporting like 2:20 yesterday. The U.S. Marshal Service said a man wanted in West Virginia was on federal weapons violations and was shot and killed. The officer who was shot was treated at a local hospital for a non-life-threatening injury. And again, thank the dear Lord on that part right there. Scary scene yesterday here, just right around the corner, like I said, from the radio station, Jackson Township there. It's terrifying. You know, you want to say you just don't think about that kind of stuff with Jackson Township, but the problem is you do just think about this kind of stuff with America. You just do. You know, that's why when I heard yesterday active shooter, like I wasn't even shocked. Not technically fit, that does not technically fit the description of what an active shooter is. That is more along the line of literally just running around trying to inflict as much harm as humanly possible. This was about you'll never take me alive, right? That's what, not that it's better, I'm not saying that. That's not, I know somebody's going to walk away thinking that's what I'm trying to say. Active shooter, this and that. It's like, this is where, I mean, again, we talk about information a lot. What's accurate, what's not, who should wait, who should go, what's ready to be passed out now, what's not. And, you know, in that moment yesterday, I was like, there are two mistakes I can make. I can make the mistake of being too early and be dead wrong, or I can make the mistake of waiting and be right. And I would rather wait and be right. I took some heat on that, not from most of you, and I think most people understand, and I'm not even looking to argue about it. I'm looking to talk about it. As, like I said, look at what happened yesterday. Look at people asking for the info. Okay, so you think that's solely a me thing? Clearly not, right? So what I'm saying is I wonder how we got to, like, the fast passing out of information, the misinfo, the disinfo, right? Like, isn't it, it's chicken and egg, it's essentially. Do we want the clicks or do we want a little bit of the info? Like, who wants what more? Today's the day to honestly just be thankful that law enforcement is good at what they do, found a way for everybody other than the perpetrator himself to get home to their dinner tables and hug their families. So outside, I mean, honestly, when I read a resolution to that story that ends like that, all I can do is tip the cap to law enforcement and say thanks for keeping everybody safe out there. Make sure you all get home safe tonight.
The Stansberry Show.
I like his energy. He doesn't have any.
On Rock 106.9.
The NFL has come out and said they still have all the faith in the world at Netflix. But you know what that means? They have lost all of their faith in Netflix. It's like a mafia movie, man. Anytime somebody shows up out of the blue, starts talking about how you're friends, you're about to get shot in the back of the head, dog. NFL starting to get a little panicked about one of their new partners. This after Friday night. Talk about that a little bit next hour. All right. You ready for some culture war stuff? Are you ready? Like, you guys want to do some culture war stuff? Apparently, putting up your tree. I've always heard this is literally, as a matter of fact, just this last week, I repeated something I had heard once about decorating for Christmas.